Hello guys, I'm Brad Carter, local chef from Moseley in Birmingham. Today I'm going to show you a real comfort classic with a little bit of healthy twist. This is toad in the hole, maybe some local sausages and my favourite beer from one of my local breweries right here in Birmingham. We're going to make a toad in the hole traditionally with Yorkshire pudding batter. The healthy twist comes in with some seasonal vegetables. We've got Savoy cabbage and some tops of the Swiss chard leaves. We're going to wilt them down together and then add 2 types of mustard, English mustard and some whole grain mustard as well. We're going to seal off the lovely sausages. You can use any sausages of your choice, Cumberland, Cotswold, anything you like, even make your own if you feel really experimental. So we're going to start off by frying the sausages off in some rendered lard, which is pork fat. If you don't want to use the fat, you can use any type of oil, grapeseed oil, sunflower oil, anything like that. Or you can replace it with other types of dripping like beef or lamb. I'm going to go pork and pork because the sausages are pork and it makes complete sense. We're also going to make a lovely little beer gravy with my favourite local dark ale from one of the local breweries in Birmingham. Some onions and some beef stock. We're going to make a little gravy, finish the toad in the hole with that, and then garnish it with some delicious healthy vegetables as well, mixed with the mustards. Let's get cooking. First stage of this recipe is making the Yorkshire pudding batter. So we can make that up to 12 hours in advance. So we could make it, put it in the fridge and leave it to rest overnight, but want to give it a minimum rest of like half an hour. So we make the batter and let it rest. You can leave it room temp or in the fridge for around half an hour just to let that batter settle down. So when we put it into the oven, it's going to rise, and that's the key. We want that batter to rise, just almost like souffle. So for this, you're going to need a nice deep bowl and a whisk. We're going to start by adding the wet ingredients. We're going to add 3 eggs. So 3 whole eggs. Then we're going to add 2 egg whites. So we're going to pass the white away from the yolk using the shell, like that, and then discard the yolk. We're just looking for extra whites for that extra lift in the oven so that we get that extra rise. Same again, another egg white. Another way of doing it without the shell is to tip it into your hands and move the yolk between your fingers, keeping it whole. You don't want to split it because it will go in, and then all the white ends up in your recipe. So discard that. So that's the eggs. Next, the milk. To this amount of eggs, we've got 450 millilitres of milk. And just give that a nice little whisk. For Yorkshire pudding batter, I always like to start with the wet first and add the dry to that. You get less lumps. So we've got the yolks and the milk. The next thing we're going to add is the plain flour. This is all-purpose plain flour, the stuff we use for a multitude of things in the kitchen. You should have some in the cupboard there. Plain flour, that's 225 grams of plain flour. And then we just carefully whisk all that flour into the wet mix. Whole eggs, egg whites, milk, and now the plain flour. And we're going to whisk it until there's no lumps. So just a little bit of elbow grease for this one. Whisk, whisk, whisk. So you whisk that for around about 2 minutes till it's nice and smooth. So you could use this recipe to cook it alone as well, to go with a Sunday roast, roast beef, roast pork, roast chicken, or vegetarian roast. But this is going to be the base of the toad in the hole. So that's about right. When the batter looks like that, it's like a loose pancake style batter. That's ready for us to start the next stage of the recipe. Okay, the next stage we're going to start by making the onion gravy with the local beer from our favourite brewery. You can use any beer of your choice. I've gone for a darker beer, which is one of my favourites, and that's going to give it real depth and real backbone. So we're going to chop some onions into really, really thin slices so that we can caramelise them to make a traditional onion gravy. So we're going to top and tail the onions. Half them directly down the middle. Just pull an edge and the onion skin should peel back nice, all whole in one go. Okay, so for the beer onion gravy, we'll slice our onions real nice and fine. As fine as we can, sharpest knife you got. Any little brown bits, you can pick them out. Sometimes they have them inside onions, you just can't spot that until you cut it. And we'll set them in a bowl. Got 2 onions, we're going to repeat the same process with all the onions. Okay, so we've chopped all the onions now, nice thin slices, ready for the base of the gravy with the local dark beer and some beef stock. We're going to caramelise those onions really slowly, add the stock and add the beer, and then just let them reduce really slowly together, and that's going to make for an amazing, delicious gravy to top the toad in the hole with a little bit later on. Right, next we're going to make the onion and the dark beer gravy. I'm using a local beer from a local brewery, one of my favourites. So a nice medium hot pan. We're going to add 50 grams of butter. You can use oil if you prefer. We're going to add the onions. And we're looking to caramelise them slowly but surely in the pan with the butter. So we'll stir them together till they're completely coated in the butter, and then we're just going to put a lid on just so that the steam enables them to cook a little bit quicker and a bit more evenly. Okay, the onions are all coated now in the butter, so we're going to add the lid and just let them fry and steam at the same time with the lid on, just till they're cooked completely through and they have a light golden brown colour. And then at that stage we're going to be able to add the beer and the beef stock. So now the onions have been on for around about 8 to 10 minutes, really nice and golden, caramelised. Slowly in that butter in the pan, take the lid off, have a little look and a little stir. You can see exactly what we're looking for, almost like fairground hot dog onions. That will go really nice with the toad in the hole. I want to do that real slow. We're going to add the local beer. We don't want to reduce the beer too much because it's going to go too bitter, but we do want to reduce it a little bit to intensify the flavour of the beer. And it's going to give a nice little bitterness in the background. In comparison to the onions, it gives sweetness. So the beer goes in and you turn the heat up and bring it to a boil. The name of this gravy and the name of the game is to reduce it till it's thick enough to coat the back of the spoon and intensify the flavours of the gravy, but not too much where it's too sticky and we've got no sauce to put over the toad in the hole. So there's a little balance that I'm going to show you as we move through making the gravy, making the sauce. So the beer's come up to the boil, and now we're going to add the 500 millilitres of chicken stock. And then bring that up to the boil. So we've got the caramelised onions, the local beer, and then the beef stock. And that's going to come up to the boil. Then we're going to turn the heat down really low and then just reduce it really slowly while we move on to making the toad in the hole. So the beer gravy with the onions and the beef stock has come up to the boil. We're just going to let that reduce really slowly now, so turn the heat down a little bit. And that's going to be reducing, intensifying in flavour while we cook the toad in the hole. So for that, I'm going to use a small pan. I'm going to actually cook the toad in the hole in. If you haven't got a small enough pan and you need something else, try a casserole dish, a roasting tray, anything with handles, as long as it's not loose bottom, a cake tin. All we're doing is sealing off the sausages. You can do that in advance, put it into a cake tin or a tray or a casserole dish, then add the Yorkie batter. The Yorkshire pudding batter is going to rise up, and that's going to work in anything. I'm going to do it all the way in the pan because I think it's cool to cook at home without using lots of equipment. So we're going to get this pan nice and hot. And touching on what we talked about before, I said we're going to use this lard pork fat, which is this, and we're going to add a little bit of that to the pan, and that's going to help caramelise the sausages, and also it's going to help to make the Yorkshire pudding rise, because if you've cooked Yorkshire puddings before, or if you haven't, you have to start off with a little bit of hot fat, add the batter, and that's what helps it rise up with the intense heat from the fat and what's in the oven. So we add some fat to the pan. It's around about a tablespoon for 4 sausages, so a nice amount. And we're just going to get that hot. You can see the gravy's just reducing nicely next to us, so we can keep an eye on that while we're making the toad in the hole. We're going to take our sausages and we're going to start sealing them off in the fat. You can hear the sizzle again. We don't want too much intense heat here. We're just looking to colour the sausages all the way around. While the gravy's reducing, the flavours are concentrating. This means we don't want to add any salt at this stage. We want to add the salt and check that towards the end to see how much beef flavour from the stock, how much beer bitterness, and how much sweet onion flavour we have at the end. That's why we always check the seasoning at the end. We're not going to do that now because it's still going to reduce and the flavour is going to get more intense. So the sausages are beginning to colour off, all on the skin. I'm just going to carefully turn them over. A nice little tip when you're colouring sausages is always turn the one you turn first, again first, then last, there. So always do it in an order so you know which way you've done it, and you always do that more evenly. If you get a hot spot in the middle of the pan, don't be afraid to move them around. Careful as well, because of the amount of fat they might spit. You can always block yourself with a pan or a lid. Okay, so once you've got the sausages coloured on one side really evenly, the next thing we're going to do is add the Yorkshire pudding batter. The reason we're only colouring more on one side is because the bottom of the pan is going to give us heat, and that's going to colour the underside of the sausages when it's in the oven. So, space the sausages out evenly. And the next stage, we're going to add the Yorkshire pudding. So pour that around, all the way around the pan. And you want to see that sizzling. You want to see that batter foaming up, and then quickly move and place it in an oven that's set to around 200 to 250 degrees fan or gas mark 6. The toad in the hole is going to go in the oven for around about 20 to 25 minutes until it's aerated, golden brown on the top and cooked all the way through the middle, just the way we like Yorkshire pudding. So now the toad in the hole is only a couple of minutes off, so it's time to start the garnishes to go with that. We've picked some really healthy seasonal vegetables, which are the tops of Swiss chard, so a leaf. The stems, they take a little bit more cooking, so we've taken them off and we're left with the leaves. They're lovely, similar to cabbage, in between a cabbage leaf and a salad leaf. We've also got some Savoy cabbage hearts. We cut the root out and we're left with these lovely little pieces. So we added a little bit of oil to a medium hot pan, and we're just going to add the leaves and just really slowly wilt them down with the lid on. That'll take 2 to 3 minutes maximum. And towards the end of the cooking, we're going to season the cabbage and the Swiss chard leaves with some salt and 2 types of mustard. That's going to go really well with the toad in the hole. So some English mustard and some whole grain mustard as well. This one's coarser, so it's got the seeds running through. This one's a little bit more spicy, so we're just going to add a small amount of this and more of this one. A little bit of salt and black pepper at the end as well. Touching back on the gravy that we made earlier, this is the beer from a local brewery in Birmingham, and the caramelised onions and the beef stock. It's just been slowly reducing while the toad in the hole's been cooking, and you can see now that looks really satisfying, like a real deep beery flavoured onion gravy. I also mentioned that the reducing intensifies the flavour, so that will bring out more of the salt, so we can now check it for seasoning. This is a good point because it's not far off being ready. I'd say the gravy doesn't need any salt, it's perfect. We let it reduce and then naturally concentrates the flavour, and we don't need to add any more excess salt, so it's obviously better for us as well. So that's just coming down nicely. The toad in the hole is a couple of minutes away. This chard and the cabbage leaves are just starting to wilt now, really solidly in the pan. The hearts of Savoy cabbage are really quick to cook because there's not a lot to break down, so you're only literally a couple of minutes, and same with the Swiss chard as well. Just to soften those leaves so you keep all those nutrients in. Just enough to bring out some of the juice. So the toad in the hole is perfectly cooked. The Yorkshire puddings rose up, the sausages are cooked in the middle. We're just going to take that out. And there it is. Look at that lovely crust from the Yorkshire pudding. And then the sausages, they're just poached perfectly in the middle. You can see that was the pan we started it off in. So we cooked the batter around the sausages and the residual heat was already in the pan, so it allowed the pudding to rise and shoot up. And that's pretty much perfect. The reason also I like to serve it in this small pan is so that we can serve it whole, and you'll see that in a minute. So the cabbage and Swiss chard are steamed nicely with the lid on in the pan now. That's perfect. Here we are. So the leaves are just wilted down really gently, but they've still got all their nutrients and bite. So we're going to add a little salt, a little pepper. Again, spice with the sausage is real nice. And then some whole grain mustard. Spoon that in. More of that than this one. This is English mustard, it's really hot. This is down to your taste. Add as much as you like heat wise. I'm going to add a little half teaspoon to that. And then just stir everything together so the mustard coats the leaves. So it delivers the mustard flavour through the leaves on the plate when we plate up in a sec. That's the Swiss chard and the cabbage leaves coated in mustard, and that's them done. We'll put a lid on them and turn off the heat, and they're completely ready. The gravy is now thick enough, seasoned perfectly enough, and it's just time for us to plate up the dish. Okay guys, everything is done for the toad in the hole. 25 minutes, the batter's risen up, the sausages are cooked, and we've got it here in this pan. So I'm going to serve this family style in the middle of the table, and it's going to allow you to just muck in, take as much as you want and share it out as you please. So we're going to take the Yorkshire pudding and the sausages, the toad in the hole, out and put it onto the plate in the centre like that. Here in the jug, we can just pour on as much as we want. This is the onion gravy with the local beer from Birmingham, one of the breweries, and some beef stock. Caramelised onions reduced down together to intensify that taste. So we're just going to pour that amazing gravy inside the toad in the hole. Again, another comfort classic from winter. You can see the gravy's just starting to come around now. It's going to keep it really nice and juicy. And then the last stage for us to plate up, we've got the lovely vegetables grown in and around the allotments in Birmingham. So here's some Swiss chard leaves, Savoy cabbage leaves, And again, we just layer them up nicely, presenting it real nice. You can just throw it onto the plate, whatever you prefer. I'm gonna build it up real nice. So each person's getting a centralized plate with the vegetables, the toad in the hole in the middle, and then we can just share and take as much or a little as we want. So that's the leaves of the Swiss chard, purple Swiss chard, some Savoy cabbage and mustard. The toad in the hole with our local beer and onion gravy. A perfect Sunday, a perfect Monday, Tuesday to Friday and Saturday dinner. You can have a comfort classic from Birmingham.